This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, it's happening with the introduction of Bill 20 at the Alberta Legislature. Alberta's Municipal Affairs Minister essentially puts the province on notice, lets everybody know that the next time that Albertans head to the polls to elect mayors, city and town councils, they're going to see political parties represented on the ballot for the first time in Alberta's history. It's a game changer, to be sure. And there's a lot of speculation around why the provincial government is doing it. And there is, of course, the clarification from the Premier herself. She's doing it because she believes that city councils, like Edmonton's, are too ideologically driven. And she figures that this is the way to level the playing field, so to speak. We've heard from different voices on Real Talk. If you caught our Friday Real Talk Roundtable, you heard from a couple of people, maybe even a few if you include Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton, who think it's a good idea. They think it'll draw out better candidates. They think that the campaigns will be more organized, that there will be more resources for people that, well, are the types of folks you want on your councils. Engaged citizens with life experience, business experience, and understanding of what it is that makes a city tick. And we've heard from others that think that this is an absolutely terrible idea, like Mayor Tyler Gandam in Wetaskiwin, president of Alberta Municipalities, who joined us mid last week. You can find it in our podcast and YouTube archives. They're concerned that the partisan bickering, the back and forth, the self-serving special interests, the lobby influence that we see at the provincial and federal levels will poison the waters at City Hall. It is happening. And on this episode of Real Talk, you're going to meet three of the people behind what we believe to be Alberta's first municipal political party. They've just released their platform as soon as this show went live. And this is your chance, if you're watching us live streaming on YouTube or listening via the live streaming Mixlr audio app presented by California Closets, to have your say as well. We're going to put your questions to them and mine. We'll have them respond to comments made previously on this show, and we'll figure out more about why they're putting in the time that they are to get involved in politics at the municipal level. That's on this episode, which is presented by our friends at Relo, Alberta's top real estate school. You know, you can find them online at relo.ca. The fact they're there online is why so many people aspiring toward a career in real estate are choosing Relo. It's convenient, it's easy to use, and they've got expert instructors that are invested in your success. There's a special discount code if you're looking to get started. You want to be your own boss. You like the idea of unlimited earning potential, and you're hearing about this on Real Talk. The promo code Ryan100 at Relo.ca is going to knock $100 off both the Alberta Residential Real Estate Bundle and the Alberta Commercial Real Estate Bundle. That's Ryan100, the exclusive promo code when you get your real estate studies and then your real estate career started by visiting Relo.ca. It's our pleasure to welcome to the Real Talk studio three of the individuals behind a brand new political party called TAPYEG. Their website's just gone live at tapyeg.ca. We'll also link to it in the show notes. Board members Jeffrey Hansen-Carlson, Amer, and Naseem Bashir joining me in studio. Good morning to the three of you. Thanks for making time for us.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
There's been rumblings for a long time that this was happening. People knew that there was organizing happening in Edmonton, that there was some fundraising happening, and there were rumors that we were going to see Edmonton's first, Alberta's first municipal political party. Today, you make that announcement, I guess, right here on the show. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Yeah, well, thanks. Happy to be here, and we're live. We've been working on this for about a year, talking with Edmontonians from all sorts of all over town, and we've been in a very grassroots manner building up this organization, and we've had to keep relatively quiet over the past year because we had to wait for some stars to align and the timing to be right. But I think now is the exact time for us to push this conversation forward.
Is the stars aligning, the province introducing legislation to open the door for municipal political parties?
That definitely is a pretty significant factor. I mean, we're committed to abide by the regulations when they're released in the next couple of months. But I think core to what TAP wanted to achieve was influence regardless. And so whether or not we became a true political party or we ended up just as an advocacy group, we were determined at the outset to make a real difference.
Did you know that this legislation was coming from Alberta's Conservative government?
No. We heard probably the same rumors others heard, and we were not involved in developing it, or we had no sort of inside scoop on it at all.
Okay. Naseem, you're well known in the city of Edmonton for your community involvement, obviously for your storied career in engineering. What was it that drew you to this movement, so to speak?
Well, there's a really long story to it. I think the fundamentals for me really align with a set of personal rules and principles, really a purpose in terms of why I do what it is I do. Like, why do you go off and do something I really don't need to do, but I want to do, and why is that? And I think it really comes down to, when my parents came to Canada as immigrants, and I came as well. You really look at the world, and my parents looked at the world through this lens of creating opportunity. People move for opportunity. And as I looked at my own career and understood, as my kids are now university age and finishing, do we have the right set of opportunities for our kids to kind of do the same thing? And if they choose that opportunity is coming somewhere else, then they're going to move. And I think as you get older, you really want to have your kids around you and give them reasons why they should be here. And I don't really think that Edmonton is creating the kind of opportunities that they should have, right? So this becomes very foundational, I think, as a parent and as a business owner to explain why, answer the question why. That's the big thing for me, is create opportunity.
Al, your career's, correct me if I'm wrong, in design, architecture. You've been involved in the sort of commercial real estate community for many years.
Correct.
Yeah. So what drew you to this? Have you typically been a politically minded or politically oriented guy?
So not very different than what Naseem has stated. It really comes down to, I've came to Edmonton back in 2008 and decided to make Edmonton home and a permanent home. So what I'd like is, in the sense of how can we make this city a great city? Don't need there's always this criticism that we get from our sister city, Calgary, with regards to its Edmonton, when in reality, I think Edmonton is a great city with lots of culture and lots of potential. And I wanted a platform to capture that and make it even greater than what it is today.
You know what I love about these two guys? Well, and everybody that's involved in TAP, is they just can't say no to a good idea. And that's how this started. It was just floating around, and one day I phoned up Al and said, Al, we need to go for a glass of wine and talk about something. And he says, I'm in. Same with Naseem. And now this started from a very casual place.
Okay, so I want to kind of like try to sum this up just based on just looking at your website. Again, it's just gone live. They hit it live when Real Talk went live, so people can check out tapyeg.ca. So what's TAP? Well, the T stands for transparent, the A stands for active, and P stands for partnerships. You also describe it as a think tank and a political party. It's both.
It is both, and I think it takes creative thinking and the courage to talk about it and engage with it and have tough conversations if we're actually going to be successful. So the two do go hand in hand.
So is this are we at grassroots? Is the grass just starting to pop up through the soil right now? I mean, people that are looking at this and going, hey, I wonder if this is a home for me. I'm trying to figure out if I have a fit, if this could be my avenue into participating in politics. Have you already figured out the whole platform, or are you just getting started?
No, we're really just getting started. I think there's so many more people, I think, that can invite themselves or be invited to the conversation. We've got work to do. We don't have all the answers yet. We've got a long way to go before the election in 25. There are things to figure out, which is a big part behind the think tank bit of that intro you just read, is because we need to think a bit, and we need to figure out just exactly. We have a good understanding, I think, of where all the challenges are. But how do we respond to those challenges in a way that's going to be realistic, where you can actually move the needle in things that we want to achieve? So there's some work to be done, a lot of work to be done. We've spent the last year going back and forth on different ideas. And I think that the next year really is going to be around trying to determine how we're going to to really come across to people the things that we really are trying to achieve in some very specific, measurable ways.
So is this like, if we want to just cut to the chase, because this is a lot of times how voters think, is this the conservative, business-friendly option? Is that what TAPYEG is on the ballot?
This is home for people that are idea-driven and action-orientated. We're not.
But people are going to say, "Well, Jeffrey, I'm idea-driven. I'm going to block the railway to stop the shipment of oil. Like an action-oriented. So we're actually going to do it." That's not what you're looking for. I guarantee it.
There has to be a measure of reason here too.
But what determines a good idea? Where are you coming at this from?
I would take that back to when I started the Edmonton project. And this, I don't want to sort of be all nostalgic here, but that really speaks to the set of values that TAP has. That was an experiment. This is a little bit less of an experiment.
This was an invitation for people to submit big, bold ideas on how to make Edmonton better.
And we'll do it.
And what came out of it from the panel of judges was the Edmonton gondola. A lot of people are like, Jeffrey Hansen-Carlson is the gondola guy.
I've said it before on the record. I was not a fan of the gondola idea, but
you were the founder of the project.
I was the founder of the Edmonton project, but I did what I said I was going to do, and that was drive forward whatever idea won the Edmonton project. And so that spirit of city building is the core component of our set of values.
I think there's this probably decade-long conversation in politics how it's changed, and I think you've seen that a lot over the last 10 years, which is we've seen the world shift hard right to center. We've seen it shift hard right to left, if you want to use those as directions. If I can wave my arms around, it's so much easier. And I think what the electorate really want today is more center, more middle, a little bit more of ideas that are just going to get things done, because the rest of that stuff is really just noise. It's just distracted us. And I think the landscape is, as a non-politician, the landscape is shifting. It's kind of shifting back to ideas about, we spend all this time, a lot of it wasting this time on the hard edges of politics, which don't do anything for us at all. I think Edmontonians really want us to just get down to the basics. And if that means that, being an engineer, we're 2 standard deviations from the mean to the left and to the right, fantastic. We really want the doors to be open to all kinds of ideas, regardless of where they are in the spectrum. Now, I get that's going to be difficult to navigate, but that's something to figure out.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No. So I was just going to say, we have about 100 very engaged individuals today from across the city. We have ward champions. We're excited to in the near future start announcing who some of these ward champions are.
People are going to go, okay, what's ward champion? Are these nominees?
These are grassroots activists.
Are these who you're running?
Maybe they'll run,
maybe
election? They won't. I don't know. I think we need to be very clear that the regulations on how this is going to be done are not released yet. And so we don't want to put the buggy in front of the horse. But obviously there is an intent here to curate people to be involved in this organization, volunteer for a committee, become a ward champion, and when we know the rules of engagement, raise their hand and go through a true process to be identified as a candidate. So what I was going to say, these ward champions, they're not the usual suspects. These are really interesting, diverse people that live from every corner of this city that are just intriguing. And we're really excited to start putting these individuals into this conversation, because it's not about us. It's not about the board. We're just building an organization to sort of facilitate a process to elevate these characters to shape this city in a real way. That's our purpose as the board.
Al, are you a ward champion?
No, not a ward champion. We've got another individual in the ward that I'm in that's quite active, but we do support that ward champion in that. And that ward champion is really the individual that leads the conversation with his neighbors, with his neighborhood, hosts his events at their place or at the community to try to bring in what really matters to that ward, what ideas are going to be put forward.
But you guys know, like, the city councilors in these wards are going to say, well, we do this too. We're currently doing this. How is this any different than what we're already doing?
I'll take that one on. I got this. So when a councilor during a campaign, and this is simplified, right? So don't take this as literal. It's simplified. So during a conventional campaign, councilor knocks on your door, and essentially the conversation is, what makes you mad? I'm going to represent what ticks you off at City Hall. That's the style of conversation that gets them the attention they need and the votes they need. The conversation our ward champions are having is, let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about real things that we can do. And again, it goes back to the value of ideas. And so, the next campaign, when our candidates are knocking on doors, they're not going to be interested in what ticks you off. They're going to be there with some really interesting ideas that are engaging.
Although the whole reason you're doing this is because you're pissed off about a bunch of stuff, isn't it? Like, if we're just talking as people over coffees or beers, if you were content with status quo, you wouldn't be putting all the effort into this.
There's a part of that that's true, but
because there's a lot of people. You guys were interrupted on your walk into the studio today by somebody pretty significant in downtown who became aware of what you're doing and immediately said to you, "You've got my vote. I'm happy to make a donation. Let me know how I can participate," because this person is sick and tired and fed up with what's happening right now. So obviously there's going to be a lot of that driving the momentum behind what you're doing.
Oh, there totally will be, and that's fine. I think as people have things that irritate them along the way, and I think we need to recognize that and understand that. But if we can have this broader conversation where we're saying, well, those are things that we need to work on. Admin needs to do a better job of pick a topic. There's lots of those. But I think if we really want to be, quote, around in 30 years or 100 years, we need to do some different things. And part of my business brain wants to turn that on, which is what's the longevity of our competitiveness as a city within the construct of a country and the construct of the world where we're relevant. And that means doing all kinds of right things.
Do you fear that Edmonton is losing relevance in real time?
I think the pandemic has unfortunately accelerated some of those things. And so some of the conditions that we've got downtown, they're exactly like, I'll never go back to, sorry for those friends from San Francisco, I won't go back downtown San Francisco anymore. They have the same problems that we do. And those things we will eventually work our way through, as we create housing for the unhoused, as we get enough money flowing to do the right things in the community. All those things I think will happen. But if you're back to what Jeffrey's saying, if you're working on building a city, we shouldn't have a 4-year view of how to build the city. We should have a 400-year view of how we're going to build the city and start to put in all the right pieces along the way so that we are socially and business-mindedly competitive in our environment. It really is the long-term trend that we should be looking at. And so, yes, we need to take care of the day-to-day. We need to do a better job of those kinds of things, but we need to be less short-viewed in terms of how we get those things done and start building on elements that are, like to my point, that are going to keep our kids here and then my kids' kids here.
I think policy outside election cycles is an issue. I'm sure you would agree, further outside than just Edmonton. That's something that we probably would do better to talk about in political context at provincial and federal levels as well.
For sure, but if you think of Edmonton as a competitor in the marketplace, it's a competitor against Calgary. It's a competitor against Red Deer. It's maybe a collaborator with Red Deer and Calgary and Grand Prairie and others as well. And those are really good ideas. We should continue to do that. But we're competing. We're competing for the best talent in the world, the best governance in the world, the best capital in the world. We're competing for all of those things. And we need to create the kind of environment that is going to keep the talent, the people that we have here. We need to keep them here and the capital here in order to make all that happen.
Let me take a quick break, Jeff, and then hold that thought. When we come back, we'll hand you the conch, and then you have an invitation on the website for people to help shape the TAPYEG platform. But you do have kind of 4 pillars, including value for tax investment and a reboot with the province, which I'm curious to get into. You're promising a tax cut in the first 100 days. Should TAPYEG form municipal government in Edmonton? More details from these 3. It's Jeffrey Hansen-Carlson, Amer, and Naseem Bashir joining us in studio on the launch of their new initiative in the city of Edmonton. It's Alberta's first municipal political party. This conversation is being made possible by the designers and installers at California Closets, the absolute best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. One of the coolest parts about dealing with California Closets is that the consultation is always free. So you've got nothing to lose. You head into their stunning showroom. Maybe you have a plan in mind, or maybe you just know you need help with your family room, your entertainment room, your laundry room. Maybe even it's your garage. Their team's got solutions for the entire home, totally customized for your living space and your budgets. It all starts with a visit to californiaclosets.ca. All this talk about city building, talk about getting involved in and understanding politics, being a community contributor. What does that context look like to you? Why not plot out your path And then learn more about what you need to do to get there at Canada's Open University. Athabasca University offers world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. And the numbers show that it's working for Canadians. You know, more than 92% of Athabasca University alumni say they're working in a job related to their field of study. Not every post-secondary can make that claim. Explore your options with the online offerings at athabascau.ca. And a lot of talk around emissions in Canada's oil sands these days. Talked to Federal Minister Randy Boissonnault just last week about Pathways Alliance. Have you checked it out online at pathwaysalliance.ca? This is the 6 biggest players in Alberta's oil sands, working with different levels of government to offer the world responsibly produced oil. They're going to do it by way of a carbon capture and storage network in Canada's oil sands to reduce emissions, protect existing jobs, and create new ones. They know that the world wants responsibly produced energy, and they know that it's what Alberta can provide. You can learn more details on the initiative by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. TAPYEG launching officially its website today, introducing Edmontonians to the city's first political party. It'll be fielding candidates in October of 2025, the next municipal election. Board members Amer, Naseem Bashir, and Jeffrey Hansen-Carlson joining us live in the Real Talk studio. Do you remember what you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, being ticked off about something has never motivated me to do anything. If I was ticked off with Edmonton, go back to Vancouver, right? I'm from Vancouver. I was involved in municipal politics, municipal political parties in Vancouver. If I was ticked off with Edmonton, I'd leave. So what's motivating me, and what I think is motivating this entire team, is the opportunity to inspire positive change.
Vancouver is one of the Canadian cities that has had municipal political parties for a while. People oftentimes would refer to them as running candidates and slates. What did you like about the idea? The general criticism, there has been a significant amount of it, and in the questions that we've been asking by way of social media, I'll get to them in a bit, but a lot of people are worried that the partisan, the bickering, the sort of self-serving nature of party politics, the one-upping and the theater that we see at the federal and provincial levels will start to pollute what happens at the municipal levels. Did you see that in Vancouver, if you're being honest?
It's sort of everywhere, right? I think so my philosophical answer to that is I believe that people want to be a part of something. I can't be a part of my candidate. It's just an individual that, does their job. I want to be a part of a club. I want to be on a team. I want to share my faith. I want to be a part of something. And that's what parties provide people. And it crystallizes a vision, puts some predictability to the path forward. And I think that predictability is essential to, risk takers, investors, city builders of all types.
Okay, let's talk about how Edmonton or how politics would look different. Changes that what do you want to call it? A TAPYEG? Is that what the party is going to be called? TAPYEG? Is that what it's going to be called?
Yep.
So that's what we'll see on the ballot. So let's say TAPYEG forms government, so to speak. You've got a majority on council. You've got a whip, and everybody's voting the way that you want it to go. You'll have a mayoral candidate, I'm assuming.
We're not there yet. I mean, we're waiting for the regulations as far as...
Sure, but it wouldn't make sense if you did this without a mayoral candidate, right? Everybody just figures that you're the mayoral candidate. You told me that you're not. Everybody just figured they're running Naseem Bashir as mayor.
The gray hair maybe suggests that, although if you go back to Don Iveson's, I mean, he is a guy that ended up with gray hair at the end of that, right? And he sure did, right?
So you really mean it? Are you on the record? You will not be running for mayor? You will not run as a candidate?
I will not. I have told my friends, and my wife has told me,
okay,
which is even more important,
yes,
that thou shalt not be a politician.
Okay.
But I intend to be a governor. That's what I do. I like, in terms of governing this organization, that's a big part of what really drives me is I think that governance ends up driving how organizations perform, whether they be not-for-profits or for-profits or municipal government, and they're all very, very different. It's really about how do you actually ensure that that organization delivers on its promises, and that's a pretty thorny area for sure.
Okay, so this is what someone's going to say to you on the doors. 100% is that you guys are talking about governing an organization or a party that's going to have candidates, or in theory, councillors or a mayor. And they're going to be answering to whom? To the party, not to their constituents. They're going to be looking to the priorities of the party, not to whatever ward that they're representing. And a lot of people are saying that's their number one concern with all of this.
Sure, and I think it's because they're looking at the world in its construct today of left versus right, and that construct doesn't necessarily have to exist in the world going forward. Maybe it'll continue to do its own thing. You're going to end up with crazy over here and crazy over there, but again, I think it's the place where Albertans really want us to be. I think the place that Albertans in general, rural and cities, are looking for organizations to lead and just end up doing the right thing. And now that's a very, sort of airy set of words, but fundamentally, I think that if we are on a path or a mission to try to, let's say, grow our economy or take care of people or both, which is ideally those things go hand in hand, then I think it starts to lead us with some guidance along with some values about how we would run our organization. And I think people would be attracted to an organization that is much more central, if you were, in terms of its ideas. And those ideas are going to change. 10 years from now, those ideas will be different as they were 10 years ago. We just need to fit into that whole world of what do our people want? Then there's this process of narrowing all of that down to what can we achieve? And then to your point of what you were saying earlier about partnerships and this, rebooting the partnership with the province, I don't think this government has done a great job of thinking of our provincial governments.
You're talking about partners. You don't think the city council has done a good job?
I do not believe they have.
Do you think that the province has done a good job dealing with the city?
I think that they're trying their best. I think they really are trying their best. And part of this is because of this ideological sort of divide between organizations. But I like to think of the world, especially in the governance world, in this perspective of détente. It's almost like not quite nuclear war. Hopefully we're not quite there, but the 70s, 80s, 90s détente, which is we just need to get along with each other, even though maybe we think of ideas differently than others do. The right approach is to negotiate, to talk, to cooperate, to plan out our fundamental strong existence going out a number of years. And that doesn't always mean fighting with each other. You get nowhere fighting with each other. It just doesn't work long term.
Al, we'll talk about the promised tax cut here. We've just got into the proposed reboot with the province. What's one thing that's caught your attention, or one thing that's been a priority for you as a board member here when you look at how Edmonton City Council is operating now, as you look at how Edmonton is being governed, so to speak? What's one thing where you've said, based on your background or your conviction, this is one of the things we got to change, and how do you intend to change it?
Well, the key is, like, the biggest one, and it's at its top news right now, is taxes, property taxes for residential and commercial properties. It's taking someone else's money and just saying, okay, well, we're going to increase it and keep increasing it. Yet we don't feel that Edmontonians are getting the value that they should be for that number, right? I think if everyone was getting value for the taxes that they pay, it should not be an issue. But the unfortunate thing is people are upset because of the value proposition with the increase that's put forward.
What would value look like to you?
Well, you know what?
No, I just want to ask Al, though, for a sec. Like when you say I'm not getting value for my property taxes, what's like one area where you go, they're dropping the ball here?
Well, it's back to basics in a sense of if Edmontonians stop saying there's no more potholes, or there's less complaints of potholes, garbage is being picked up, snow removal is being done in a way, I think those are core services that we should not be every few years coming back to and then saying, well, we need to do a better job. Snow is not a new thing in Edmonton.
Why are we still talking about it?
Why are we? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because that's what pisses people off at a municipal level.
This is why we have something very innovative in our platform. TAPYEG is going to form the next government. That means we're going to have 7 votes on council. We're going to get some things done. One of the first things we're going to do is a plebiscite. And this plebiscite is going to ask Edmontonians to rank order and provide us some meaningful perspective on the 70 or so programs and services that are offered by the City of Edmonton. Some of those will be off limits for obvious reasons, but there'll be some low-hanging fruit. And if Edmontonians through this plebiscite tell us they have no idea what this program is, nobody uses it, nobody gets it, it's a waste of money.
What would be an example of low-hanging fruit?
Well, I mean, everybody would have their individual opinions, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're committed to the plebiscite. And it's also why I think nothing really is getting done to address the financial situation the city's in around the current big table.
Yeah, but like, what would be an example? Like, people want to say, we'll get a sense of like what the feel is. Like, if you're like, we should defund all the arts, that's different than like we should play hardball with developers, which is different than we're not building the new fire hall in the West End. You know what I'm saying?
So
Like,
I'll give you one idea.
Yeah.
So here's an idea, and it actually goes back to the previous council, which is around electric buses. Great idea, way too early. Council made a decision at that point in time, which they probably shouldn't have, in terms of where they should expend the $60 million or whatever it was for buses. And so I think that sometimes I think our governments try to lead on innovation on things that are attractive to the electorate and attractive in terms of sustainability of environment, which I totally believe in. But the decision that they made ultimately at the end of the day was the wrong one, because now we have all those buses sitting there not doing anything, right? So I think there's just this pressure to act and to be innovative on ideas that are sometimes maybe too early to innovate on. There's some basics I think that we could get right around innovation. Maybe wait. Other communities have waited much longer to make sure that the technology that they're applying is actually going to be fruitful. Otherwise, you're just risking capital, and that capital is everybody's money that basically they put in terms of grants or in taxes or wherever it comes from. Right?
Let me throw to. So we talked to Wetaskiwin Mayor Tyler Gandam, who's the president of Alberta Municipalities, just a couple of episodes ago. Real Talkers, you can find that obviously wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. He's not talking about TAPYEG, but he's talking about Bill 20, and he's talking about the introduction of parties like TAPYEG in Alberta. And this is what he, as a mayor, identified as pretty much his number one concern.
I think the discourse in council chambers is going to change dramatically, and it's not going to be in favor of the municipality. It's going to create a whole lot more divisiveness within council chambers. We're seeing it right now in the provincial and federal level, and I really, really hope that we can avoid it at any cost at the municipal level.
94.6%, let's say 95% of voting members were in favor of Alberta municipalities asking the province to refrain from introducing partisan politics into local elections. When's the last time you saw a 95% result in membership polling?
It doesn't happen very often. That's part of the great thing about municipal politics, and when we get together as municipal leaders, is that we share different opinions across the province. We represent 265 municipalities, and they've all got different needs, and it's going to come across in different ways. Depending on what color pajamas you wear really doesn't matter when you're talking about garbage collection. And it's just really frustrating that this is the route that we're going.
That was Tyler Gandam, president of Alberta Municipalities. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, with all due respect, I disagree with the position. I think what we are doing is an element of democracy. And so to suggest that what we're doing is incorrect on in some measure, I sort of find that a little odd.
Do you see kind of the angle that he's coming from, a concern around the partisan nature or the bickering or kind of the us versus them, as opposed to the kind of consensus building approach that you see happening on council?
If you're involved in this city,
are they really building consensus?
I don't know if they are. You tell me. I'm asking the question.
They are, and so I think you've got a council of 13 different opinions of things sometimes, and the votes go one way or the other, but I don't really see the difference that much when 13 versus the 12 or 13 versus 0, right? I think the thing to understand here in my mind is that what we've been doing for decades and decades and decades simply isn't working. So why not try a new disruptive approach that will maybe line up things differently? The government has called this a pilot project. Okay, fine, it's a pilot project. Let's try it. And maybe we'll end up with something new. And I think that's one of the ideas I like the most about this whole process. It's no different than tech and innovation. This is disruption to politics, which is a really good idea, because it ain't working. It simply is not working because we keep on doing the same things over and over again, hoping for better results, and we're not getting there.
There's 13 ineffective political parties in this city right now. And
Are you saying every single councillor is ineffective?
Sure. Yeah. And no, not ineffective, but operating a micro political party. And so what TAP is doing is overtly doing what has happened in the last election and election before that covertly. So the T for transparency is that's what this means.
Let me talk about this, the value for tax investment promise. People can read more again at tapyeg.ca. You say TAPYEG will lower taxes in the first 100 days in government. Residential taxes will reduce from 0.85% to 0.68% of property value. The non-residential taxes will reduce from 2.2% to 1.8% of property value. And then you go on to describe the plebiscite that you talked to us about earlier. You say you'll fix the budget for redefined core services, reduce or eliminate funding for services and programs that Edmontonians have determined create the least value, and that you'll undertake necessary organizational, operational changes to right-size the city. I can imagine that city councillors that like lost sleep and spent hours and hours of mind-numbing participation in council chambers trying to get the budget passed, obviously trying to keep the mill rate, trying to keep the increase as low as possible for their own political survival. But with all realities considered, would look at something like this and go, we would love to lower taxes in the first 100 days as well. How are people to believe that, number one, you guys can do it, number two, you know what you're doing in doing it?
So I'll put some numbers to that. So what the proposal means in terms of a reduction in revenue to the city of Edmonton. 2023, it was a $3.3 billion corporation. This represents about a reduction in revenue of about $400 million. We believe, TAP believes, that with some tough decisions, some real input through the plebiscite from Edmontonians, that's absolutely achievable.
So where does it go from here? What is, like, when if somebody's sitting there and going, well, maybe I'm not that interested in politics, or maybe super keen on politics, they're intrigued by this, but they don't know if it's a good fit. Like, what's your message? Who's your message to, first of all?
I think it's to all the folks that are here in Edmonton. And this is part of the challenge we've got. Is we've got 38% voter turnout. People aren't in this community, and others are really not interested that much in municipal politics. So we need to find a way to a path forward for them to actually care and get involved, because it's meaningful to them in their day-to-day lives here in Edmonton. They need to participate, and I think and that's a big part of that, the think tank bit of what it is that we want to do is we really want to engage people to take part, to actually make an important part of the day, to do what we're doing, which is spend breakfast, lunches, dinners, Saturdays, whatever, working on our community, trying to get it better again for the place that we want to live and we want our kids to stay. That means taking some time out from the 9 holes you're going to do on Saturday at Victoria Park to spending some time on taking care of your community. And I think this is a long and effective way to get there. And so one of the other key things that we're talking about doing is how do we get people to show up either before the election, for sure, before the election, give us some ideas about where we should be, during the election, and then after the election. It's your community. Come play with us, work with us. It's very gratifying to know that you can move the needle on some things that really bother you, rather than just complaining about it. So get out of the chair, come and help us.
That comment on voter turnout is so important. The team has said multiple times over the past year, we will know when we have succeeded, when voter turnout is, we just pick 50% because it's a big lofty goal. And so we're going to do a lot of innovative things. We're going to do a lot of things that haven't been done before, with the sole purpose of getting people, to Naseem's point, engaged in this city.
What would be an example of something that you can do to improve voter turnout in Edmonton?
Have an exciting party, have cool events, have interesting conversations, approach it a little bit differently. I think, we have our monthly tap room event now. Go to the website, figure that out, come connect with us in person, get a sense of kind of the vibe that we've got. That's where it starts.
A stat I saw the other day is that Gen Z is now the same cohort demographically as boomers are. And there's they're so disengaged in some cases. And so how do you engage this huge voter set that that have been around for a few years, just finishing university, or maybe are not, or maybe a little bit older than that. How do you engage those young people that are going to come out and take over for me and Jeffrey and Al and you and everybody else next little while? We need those folks to come along. And so, and I think if we look at the environment in terms of politics, there's so many more people that are younger that are going to struggle in this city. I talk to people that say just last week, I got to move to Sherwood Park when I retire because I can't afford to live in Edmonton. And so we're transitioning all our kids into apartment housing. The taxation on single family homes and other homes are just going to continue to go up. If we can't create affordability in our community for people to stay because we're overtaxing everybody and they're not getting more out of their city, then we're going to become even less of more of a shell of a city over 20 years and 30 years and 40 years. So it's really come out and save your city. It's come out and save our environment. It's come out and save this amazing place that we've got. I mean, Edmonton's an outstanding city with lots of amazing things to do. We want to keep it, and and that means participating. So that would be the pitch. My Gen Z kids, get out and vote, come and participate. Tell us what it should look like, because we're building it for them. We're on the conveyor belt on the other end going the other way. It's for them.
What have you been telling your friends, Al?
Well, this is really a platform for Edmontonians. There's no intent of the individual around this table to run. We have no hidden agenda in the aspect. We want this to be a platform for Edmontonians to come forward, put forward their ideas, their thoughts, and let us know how we can make this city a great city.
Interesting comment here from Lauren, who wants me to ask you how you would work with city workers, how you would cooperate with city workers. I feel like a big part, and I might be just drawing a direct line here, but my understanding of one of the big reasons why Edmonton's property tax increase looks like it does is because of some negotiations with a ton of workers that were due raises. We have different opinions from people on whether or not the city should have been budgeting for that or who's responsible for that. But that big CSU 52 contract that went through, et cetera, I think reiterated, number one, that obviously salaries are a huge expense for the city. But number two, the city knows it needs to pay its workers if it wants to keep them. So how would you approach that? Question from Lauren in the live chat. Sure.
So I think there's two parts to it. Number one, to Naseem's point earlier, is being exceptional at governance. I think the current mayor and council, their heart's in the right place, but they meddle in all sorts of different things. They're not focused on being exceptional governors. And a part of that comes with empowering and trusting the administration, the experts in the administration, to do their job, to do it well without the political noise.
You can learn more about TAPYEG by visiting the website tapyeg.ca. It's just gone live this morning. You can learn more about what they're doing. And if you so choose, get involved. Engage with them on Twitter, on Instagram. We've been talking to board members, founder Jeffrey Hansen-Carlson, Naseem Bashir, and Al Amer. Thanks for making time for us, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, you bet. Appreciate you driving some of this conversation. Real Talkers, you know what to do as well. Our inbox is open 24/7 to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Let us know what you think about this. Are you inspired? Are you turned off? Where do you land on this? And we'll get to some of your comments in days to come. And before we get to Connie Walker, we're thrilled to talk to Connie. What a year it's been for her, the podcaster, the investigative journalist, one of Time's most influential people of 2024. I want to talk to you about a festival that's coming up that Real Talk is very proud to support, and that's Northwest Fest. It kicks off on May 9th, Edmonton's summer festival season officially rolling with Northwest Fest. It's Alberta's premiere of Common Ground, the highly anticipated sequel to the 2020 hit documentary Kiss the Ground, with contributions from Jason Momoa, Laura Dern, Rosario Dawson, Woody Harrelson, and many more. A sweeping and uplifting story of the pioneers of the regenerative movement working tirelessly to bring our planet's entire ecosystem back to life. Northwest Fest has just announced its full lineup, and tickets are now on sale at northwestfest.ca. That's where you can browse the lineup and check out which films you're going to see. This is an incredible opportunity to see some of the films that you're going to see represented at the Academy Awards, to see some of the films that filmmakers are talking about, including the cigarette surfboard. We love this story. A young designer seizing the opportunity to raise awareness about ocean stewardship with the interest generated by his surfboard that he crafted from thousands of littered cigarette butts. What a fascinating film that is. The cigarette surfboard, all part of the lineup at northwestfest.ca. Wanted to let you know that on Friday, May 3rd, that's this coming Friday, our Real Talk Roundtable will feature filmmakers connected to Northwest Fest. Do you have plans yet for Mother's Day? Friesen Brothers wants to look after you. If you're looking to send Mom a clear message about how much you value her, how much you appreciate her, a charcuterie box from Friesen Brothers is a great way to do it. You can order yours today online at cateringbyfriesen.com. They'll prepare the charcuterie box with the best of Alberta deli meats, cheese, and accoutrement. It's easy to order online, and you can pick up at any of Friesen Brothers' 17 Alberta locations. The charcuterie box just $90 at cateringbyfriesen.com. And we loved this email from Neil, who's a real talker who found himself in a tough spot. He was worried about his property, and so he got in touch with Complete Care Restoration, just like we've been telling you to do if disaster strikes. Neil wrote in and let us know that they had a freezer ice maker that malfunctioned, and they were concerned about moisture under their floorboards. Well, he got in touch with Complete Care Restoration. Kelly, the owner of the company, was in touch with Neil. In the first 24 hours, they dispatched somebody to go take a look. Neil says, I was so impressed with their prompt response, their professionalism, the thoroughness of their response. He said, Complete Care Restoration seems like a first-class company. That from Neil, and we appreciate his email. We love hearing when you've had a good experience, a great experience with a Real Talk partner, and you let us know about it. We'll talk to Connie Walker, an unbelievable storyteller. You've heard her on Real Talk before. Her Stolen series, as you'd heard on Spotify, had, of course, achieved grand acclaim as one of Canada's top performing podcasts. And then came the accolades and the result of her incredible work and her very important storytelling, a Peabody Award, a Pulitzer Prize, an inclusion on Time's 2024 list of the world's 100 most influential people. Connie Walker will be joining us in just a few moments. Wanted to get to some of your comments. So we've been asking you how you feel about municipal political parties. Several recent episodes on Real Talk have touched on it after the Alberta government introduced Bill 20, which allows for partisan political interests, political parties at the municipal level. On my tweet, I asked how you feel about it. You can follow me at Ryan Jesperson. You can follow the show at Real Talk RJ. John Morgan said, I just think this is going to help the already powerful and connected on either side of the divide. John says powerful and connected doesn't necessarily equate to better. He says municipal politics is still, at least upcoming to this legislation, Bill 20, accessible to people with little resources but great ideas. I told John I thought that was very well said. Now, Jared Campbell, who joined us on our Friday roundtable, Jared, a longtime political campaign organizer, campaign volunteer, said that he thinks that Bill 20 is going to help with this. He said that there are people with great ideas but little resources, and he thinks that a party system would provide more resources for those people. So there's the counterpoint. Graham wrote in, tweeted at us, said, well, I disagree with it in general. He said, I think you could make an argument for this for big city councils. He says, but I think it would be extremely negative for towns and counties. He says, you want people thinking about decisions from a local perspective, not a party perspective. Jeremy Dirksen says, I think it'll make things easier for campaign strategists, for lobbyists, for political manipulators, but it'll be harder for everybody else. Jeremy says voting blocks and party politics at the municipal level will center ideology over local representation, leading to culture war and gridlock. That from Jeremy on Twitter. Joanne says the vote in blocks, it'll be the same decision that currently plagues the provincial and federal governments. And how can you vote en masse and still be responsive to the needs of your ward, says Joanne. Oftentimes you can't. Terry McConnell, a longtime journalist and author. I love Terry's book, by the way, on Peter Pocklington and the Gretzky trade. I'd trade him again. Terry says it has been my experience from covering municipal politics for a good part of my career that consensus is the most effective way of ensuring healthy functioning of local government. To that end, there's little room for political parties and their reliance on compromise to succeed. Pat says, in my opinion, the trouble with the current system is peer pressure for consensus. Once a decision's made, it's frowned upon for a member of council to voice opposition, not to mention how power is practically concentrated in unelected admin rather than council. Maybe talking about the city manager and the like. Pat wonders, would parties help? I'm not sure. Blaise Bomer, formerly of Jason Kenney's Premier's office, tweets in and says voter satisfaction with the councils in Edmonton and Calgary are pretty low. He says, as your guest, Jared Campbell, mentioned, this will make the pool of potential candidates greater, and the parties will put forward their best candidate and provide them with the resources to win. That from Blaise, commenting on our Twitter thread. We appreciate everybody that chimes in, our YouTube live chat as well. We're going to change gears now. This really an amazing story. An amazing story of investigative journalism, an amazing story of truth and reconciliation. Connie Walker is not the story. The subjects of her reporting are, but the impact of her journalism is a story unto itself. Connie Walker in just a moment, but first, here is an excerpt from Stolen: Trouble in Sweetwater.
It's just so big, so much land, so many ways to hide things.
On the Navajo Nation, vast stretches of open desert and red rock unspool in every direction. It's a place where people can easily disappear.
Money is not going to get anybody to talk here.
That place really got bad at nighttime. Gunshots just turned into the wild, wild west.
Those guys know something. I just think they're afraid to say it.
You're not a cop, are you, right?
I came here looking for answers after a Diné elder vanished in the dead of night.
My first instinct is, what do you mean she's missing? She doesn't just go missing. She just doesn't go leave and not say anything.
But I soon found something else. A tangled web of violence and retaliation.
It's survival out there, that's what it is. It's about survival.
Look around, you never know what you're going to find because there's a lot of killing going on in this area.
People know you can get away with murder out there.
That an excerpt from Stolen: Trouble in Sweetwater. The investigative journalist behind it is Peabody Award winner, Pulitzer Prize winner, Connie Walker. Welcome back to Real Talk. How does it feel to be introduced like that these days?
It still feels surreal, honestly.
Yeah, it's the highest honor in journalism. And when you won the Pulitzer Prize, we had you on the show already. As I told you, I listened to your first season of Stolen in 48 hours or less, the entire season. It knocked my socks off. Incredibly powerful storytelling. So I wasn't surprised that it's resonated with the people that hand out these honors, but still it's got to be a little bit surreal. I mean, for the sports metaphor, it's hoisting the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and honestly, there's so many things this year that just feel like things keep getting stranger and stranger, kind of. I mean, it's obviously incredible to have our work be recognized. It's such by such prestigious honors like the Pulitzer Prize or the Peabody Award. And I think, it feels surreal still, I think, because it was for such a personal story. Surviving St. Michael's was really like a story about my family and my father. And it was so deeply personal that it feels like it was created for a podcast. It was created to be shared, but then it just feels, I think, even more special because of that it's been recognized in all of these different ways. So honestly,
I'll let people know if they want to go back after they listen to this interview. You first joined us on July 11th of 2022, and that was when you talked to us about your project. about Stolen surviving St. Michael's. Did you know at that point, Connie, coming up on 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago-ish, that Stolen would evolve into a series that would receive such great acclaim? No?
No, I mean, I think that obviously, like, I think the most that I would ever hope for as a journalist would be that our work would be, it would have some kind of impact on our listeners. But, I spent most of my career in Canada at the CBC, and most of that actually in television. And so I think my expectations were never for something like a Pulitzer Prize. It was really more about, trying to make sure that we were trying to do work that was relevant, work that I felt was important. I think that what's really still surprising to me, honestly, like given where I started, is that it's 2024 and I've been able to focus almost exclusively on reporting on Indigenous issues for the last, really since 2013. It's been almost 10 years. And that is something I never could have dreamt of when I first started my career in 2000. I think back then there was not only very little interest in Indigenous stories, but I feel like there was really a belief that people didn't care, or Canadians didn't care. Canadians, didn't feel like our stories were a priority. And I think all of this recognition of my work and the fact that I've been able to do this for as long as I have is proof that that's just not true.
I mean, I think in part it has to do with your storytelling. In part, it has to do with your incredible talent and your team. The production value of these podcast series is remarkable. But there's much more than that, isn't there? Like, what do you think is changing in Canada, in First Nations in Canada, and the general Canadian population? Like, what would you say has changed since, or like in the last 3 or 5 or 10 years, do you think?
I mean, I feel like it's honestly been like this snowball that just gets bigger and bigger, like the longer that we kind of roll down this hill together. And I think like so much of it like is not just a single thing. Like, I feel like, it really started to shift, I think, around 2012, 2013, like part of the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, this kind of growing awareness around the crisis of violence that so many communities face in terms of like missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and also men and boys. And I think, really for us in Surviving St. Michael's, though, it was the discovery that was made in Kamloops in 2021. Like, that was such a really like pivotal moment, I think, for the country, because we had already had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We had already had, residential schools at that point had been in the news since like the 90s, really started coming into the spotlight, the truth about residential schools. But really, I think it was after the discoveries were made in Kamloops that people really kind of seemed to start to grasp what that history really meant. And I think for survivors, it was also created this space really for them, some of them for the very first time, to come forward and start talking about their experiences. And that's certainly what led to our podcast. But I feel like all of those things, these cumulative things, have really helped push these stories forward.
What I would imagine that you've, through the course of conducting these interviews and collecting this information and the process, I can't imagine the hundreds of hours that goes into the storytelling. But I would imagine maybe even at the time of these interviews or in follow-up, you've heard from people who have been greatly impacted by your work, maybe the subjects of the stories or maybe otherwise. What's an example of some of the most powerful feedback that you've received?
I mean, I spoke at a gathering for residential school survivors last summer in Winnipeg, and some of the people who were in the audience were actually people who were in the podcast. So, as part of the presentation that I gave was about Surviving St. Michael's, and they were hearing their own voices. And I think that, what I've heard from survivors is just how, incredibly powerful it is to know that their voices are being recognized, that their voices are being heard, that they're being believed, and that they're being respected in the ways that they're telling their truth and their stories. Like that is something I think that is very recent, honestly, for so many survivors. Like I think it still happens right now, but I feel like the space that they have now to be heard is one that they that they haven't had since they left those schools, for some of them like 40-50 years ago. So this is, I feel like, I think really so important that they're given the space and the ability to share their stories. That some of the most powerful things that I heard personally, though, were from other intergenerational survivors. Like, this was surviving St. Michael's was really the story of my dad's experience at a residential school in Saskatchewan. And I discovered that, he was there from the time he was 6 years old, and that he experienced abuse by a priest at this residential school. And for me, the podcast was really my kind of journey and my kind of quest to better understand him, and to really learn like how that experience that he had in a residential school shaped the father that he was to me. Because, I know that it had a terrible impact on his life. And when I was a kid, he was still really struggling and very abusive. And, it really, I think, damaged our relationship in ways we were never able to repair before he passed away. But through the podcast, I felt like through interviews with his brothers and sisters, through understanding the truth about what he endured and what he survived in that school was like so enlightening as a daughter. And I heard from so many other intergenerational survivors who said that when I was talking about my experiences with my dad, they saw themselves in it. They thought that I was talking about their fathers or their mothers. And that is, I think, the power of sharing and the power of storytelling is to really create those connections and to be able to see yourself in the stories. And I think for Indigenous people in particular in Canada, that is something that, is relatively recent, that we've been able to see ourselves in media, in journalism. And I think that is something that, is something that's so powerful, and certainly like gratifying for me as a storyteller and journalist to get that kind of feedback.
People can check out ConnieWalker.com to link to many of your projects. And the first thing they'll see on the website, our work is not over. Have you heard from young journalists, investigative journalists, either at the outset of their career or aspiring to do as much? Have you heard from Indigenous journalists in particular? Maybe, I would imagine, pretty inspired by what you're accomplishing?
I mean, I'm inspired by them as well, honestly. Like, I feel like this is such an exciting time to be an Indigenous journalist in Canada and in the United States. I think that, any success that we have is just part of this growing recognition of how important it is to support Indigenous people to tell our own stories. And I think that's happening at the CBC where I used to work, but I feel like that's happening all across newsrooms across the country. And I think that momentum is also starting in the United States. So there's like organizations like the Indigenous Journalists Association, which used to be called NAJA, which is just so exciting in terms of the number of journalists that are engaging in this kind of work. And absolutely, I feel like, it also goes beyond journalism. I think we have to look at, all kinds of media, like movies and documentaries and books and television shows. Like, I think the success of Reservation Dogs in the US is something that has, has crossed over here into Canada as well, in terms of the impact that it's having, again, to have Indigenous people see ourselves and our full selves kind of represented in those ways is so incredibly inspiring and powerful. And so our podcast has ended at Spotify. That we just published our final season. We're looking for a new home, but whatever the future holds, I think I believe that this work is not over. There's more work to do and more stories to tell.
Yeah, well, I mean, the timing of this as you look for a new home, and obviously investment in your journalism and storytelling, to be named to the Time 100 list, Connie. Time's 100 most influential people of 2024. Like, we're talking on planet Earth. If that was the top 100 in Canada, that would be amazing. No, it's the top 100 on planet Earth, writes Time. It's her relentless commitment to exposing hidden truths, which she pursues with the dogged drive of an investigator, the compassion of a relative, and the vulnerability of an artist that makes her voice so powerful. Would you tell us about when you found out that you were on this list and the whirlwind since then, including the in-person event that you just attended?
Yeah, I mean, I found out a few weeks ago, maybe even, a month ago or so. And honestly, like, we were so busy with the production of the final season of Stolen, like, I really didn't have much time to absorb anything. I think that I was like, as journalists often are, maybe slightly skeptical when I saw the email. I was like, is this a real thing? What is, a little bit in disbelief. And then once I had a bit more space, then I could get really excited about it. And then when the list was actually announced on the 17th of April, that really just kind of opened the floodgates in terms of really kind of feeling the impact of what that actually meant. It is again like just a kind of recognition I never even fathomed or thought possible, really. But again, I think it speaks to this change, this shift that we're seeing. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than even our podcast. I think it's it's part of this shift of recognition of the importance of understanding Indigenous history here in Canada and in the United States. And that's something that, I've been working like hard over several years to help make that change. And it's just so gratifying to see that it's happening.
Where was that event in New York City that you attended that I saw on your Instagram? Yeah. So can you tell us about that? And like, did you, I mean, I would imagine an opportunity like that, number one, to amplify your work and that sort of a thing, but also just to connect with other remarkable people. What was that experience like for you as a person, as a professional? I can't even imagine.
I mean, it was an experience for me as a mother because I brought my kids.
Cool.
When I found out that Dua Lipa was one of the other 100 people and was going to be performing at the event, I was like, my 12-year-old has to come with me.
Coolest mom ever. Coolest mom ever.
At least for one night only, sure. Anyway. But no, it was incredible. It was really incredible night. I really just don't even have words to describe, because obviously there's so many incredibly inspiring people who were recognized in this list, people who are doing obviously like work in their fields, innovating in their fields, leaders and pioneers in astrophysics and in social justice movements. Like, it was just inspiring. We actually at our table, Michael J. Fox was at our table because he was being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his advocacy for Parkinson's and research. And also Kylie Minogue was at our table, and Uma Thurman, and Dua Lipa was sitting at the next table over. It was really kind of a surreal experience.
That's wild. Michael J. Fox, another great Canadian, of course. Did you have a chance to talk to him?
Yeah, we did. We like he sat at our table, and he was there with his wife Tracy, and we just excited to learn that we were also from Canada. But it was really just kind of a really fun experience. And then he gave an incredibly inspiring speech and talked about his dad and his journey over the last 20 years, really helping to raise money for Parkinson's research and being the incredible role model that he is. it was just such an inspiring night. I'm so glad that I got to share it with my kid. I think that it's left a really big impression on them, and they didn't they don't really know who Uma Thurman is or Maya Rudolph and all these people that they got their pictures taken with, but they were so excited when Dua Lipa performed. and it's going to, I think, be televised on ABC on Mother's Day. So
amazing. Okay, well, we'll be tuned in. I've been following it on your Instagram, and just I don't know. We just I don't know why I would say we feel just invested in what you're doing it feels weird to call it fans of your work, because you're talking about such serious and important stuff, but just as just a huge appreciation for what you're doing. And I should read some of the comments here in the live chat so you hear them. I mean, but some people are just really, really complimenting your work, talking about the importance of it. People there was one of our audience members that said they listened to one of the entire series of Stolen in one sitting, which is, wow. I think just says a lot. You know how competitive it is to get people's attention here. But your work accomplishes that. Shirley says her voice is filled with hope and optimism for the future. How does she do this? No anger, no resentment. I'm awestruck. I would imagine you've had your moments.
I'm plenty angry, though.
Yeah.
I think I feel like my anger actually is a big motivator for me. I think especially for any investigation I think that we've done, I really feel like as a journalist, the investigation is really what motivates me. And so often it is fueled by a feeling that there's something has to change, that something has happened here, and that we need to expose some kind of truth or wrongdoing. And I'm definitely somebody who, I get angry about something, and that's something that really motivates me to keep going. So I feel and also I think that, for me, it is hard work. The subject matter is so intense often, and it's about really serious, some of the most serious realities that First Nations and Inuit and Métis people live and experience in Canada. Is so much part of my work, but it also has always been part of my life. I grew up on my reserve. I grew up in a really tight-knit, close family, but dealing with so many of the issues that, we talk about when we talk about, First Nations in Canada with my mom. We still don't drink the water out of the tap at my mom's house. We still run out of water almost every time I go home. These are things and issues that are deeply personal for me, because this is part of my lived experience as a First Nations woman.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we're talking to you about the sort of your incredible success and the recognition that comes after obviously a long career and thousands and thousands of hours of honing your craft and telling these stories. And as we see you, if you'll pardon me putting it this way, skyrocketing to success. I mean, the Time 100 list, a Pulitzer Prize, a Peabody Award. At the same time, we see journalism, and correct me if you disagree, but basically in crisis across the country. The business model is a disaster. There are people like you and me who are finding ways to not just remain relevant, but to make a career of it and to continue doing work that we care about and that we know to be important. But it's a grind. And we talk about these young journalists and maybe some of them that have either inspired you or that are inspired by you. And I sometimes fear that with all the headlines about layoffs and cutbacks and station closures, that young people in their right minds will choose a different career. What's your assessment of journalism and where it's going, and even the importance of Indigenous told journalism about Indigenous history and Indigenous people in this country? When you look at the bigger picture, where's your head at?
I mean, I think there's no way around talking about how difficult it is right now. I'm part of it. Our show was just canceled in December, and I think this is my second week of unemployment. I think there's so many journalists, unfortunately, over the last few years have been laid off and are looking for work and struggling in this industry. And I think it's an incredibly difficult time for journalists on both sides of the border in Canada and the United States. So I absolutely empathize, especially with younger journalists who are coming into this industry at this time of crisis. I think that it also feels to me like very similar to when I entered journalism. I feel like there have always been, this is something that this industry has always been dealing with, is adapting to like this constantly changing industry. And I feel like, if there is hope and optimism, that it is that there are really like incredible people who are doing this work, who are finding new ways to continue, who are innovating and adapting, to all of the changes that are happening, as challenging as they are. And I think that along with all of this is really, we're being forced to like look in the mirror and ask ourselves about how are we, staying relevant? How are we ensuring representation? Like, I feel like some of the old rules that we relied on previously, I think we're really having to take a second look at that. And I think that part of that is the acknowledgement of how important it is to invest in, Indigenous journalists, but also other journalists of color who are representing underrepresented communities, because we're not so underrepresented anymore in terms of Canadian society. We need to have our newsrooms and our journalism schools be more reflective of the communities that we're living in. And I think that, some of that kind of inspiring innovation comes from the younger journalists who are making space for themselves and kind of carving out their roles and their spaces in this industry despite the challenges that are happening.
So well said. Do you have a long working list of the next series and the next and the next and the next? Like, how is your brain working?
I mean, I feel like I always have something that I'm interested in doing. And I think that following that voice, that whatever it is that is piquing my curiosity, that is causing me to want to dig in and find out as much as I can about a story is something that has been working for me. So I'm going to keep going with that. I don't know what shape my next story will take or where it will actually live, but I definitely know that there are more really important stories out there that should be told and that I'm really interested in. And I feel like, I also feel this like responsibility in a way. I feel like for so much of my career, I didn't have this opportunity that I have now. And now that I have it, I feel like I really need to like, just keep building the momentum and keep going as far as I can. Like, I don't feel by any stretch, like I think if Surviving St. Michael's taught me anything, it's how little we actually know about the truth, even in terms of residential schools, but definitely in terms of the truth of the Indigenous side of our shared history, the Indigenous perspectives that are critical and relevant today in 2024. Like that, there's so much work that still has yet to be uncovered, and that's something that I'm committed to doing, whether it's through a podcast or something else. But I'm hopeful that I'll be able to be supported to continue to do this work in some way.
Can we just get into the weeds for a second? And can you explain to us how that works? Like, do you have an agent, I have to assume, that's pitching, groups like Spotify or Amazon Prime or something like that, all these, content houses now, and do they pitch it? And then that studio or whatever you want to call it will green light a project, and then you have the funding to make that project happen, and then they release it exclusively on their platform. Is that kind of the business model that you follow in 2024?
I mean, that sounds great. If you what you just outlined sounds perfect.
Sure. Well, I feel like being your agent would be. I would just be like, well, look at her body of work. What do you want? Like, where do you sign? Like, let's go. But
I really don't have a plan right now. I feel like the thing that I'm focusing on, obviously, it's like trying to have as many conversations as I can with people who are doing inspiring work at places that I feel like, we have shared values, or there's some interest or acknowledgement in the work that I do. I feel like that, I'm definitely trying to do that as much as I can. I think that I'm also honestly like looking back and thinking about like the ambitious reporting that we've been able to do over the last few years, and like what are ways we can build on that. What are like how can we continue to have as much impact as possible in this work, and really just trying to be strategic and thinking about like those kinds of partnerships and what makes the most sense. But I don't have something that I'm just waiting to announce.
Right.
I kind of feel like I'm out here right now, and I'm in a really weird place, because I've been employed since I was 20 pretty much, and I was at CBC for 19 years, and then at Gimlet, Spotify for 4 years, and now I kind of have this like uncertainty ahead of me, and I'm trying to be mindful about it and not just panic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if I know you well enough to offer what may come across as advice, but I've never walked miles in the shoes.
I'm always open for advice.
I've never been awarded anything at the same table as Michael J. Fox and Dua Lipa and Uma Thurman. So take this for what it's worth. But I would think that right now, the quality of the journalism that you have been practicing and releasing, to me, I mean, this just feels like, I feel like you need to be at the New York Times. I feel like the biggest media properties in Canada need to get off their wallets and get serious about funding incredible journalism by you and other people, because the proof of performance is there. The audience is there. Like you said, there's no doubt about the importance of these stories. Like, isn't it interesting, like on one hand, where you're saying, in hosting the Stolen series, what you've realized is how many stories out there are untold, and you sense almost an opportunity there, but it's like a tragic opportunity. It's like a gut punch that there are so many stories that have not been told. There is so much that Canadians don't know. I wish I could remember what audience member it was. Someone in the live chat said that, when they were going to high school in Kamloops, they knew that there was a residential school nearby, but they had no idea about the atrocities until recently. And I think that there are millions of people in Canada that would tell those same stories in their own communities. They knew, but they didn't know. And that's why I'm, one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for the journalism that you've been doing. And I can't wait to see, we'll be waiting with bated breath to see what you do next. But as much as it's easy to just say this dismissively, I hope you don't feel anxiety or panic about it, because I would imagine people are lining up to work with you.
But it was funny because the first day after, it was the Monday, I was like, I'm going to take some, I haven't had a bit of a break, or I'm going to take some time. But that morning I was already like, oh my gosh, I have to do this, or I have to do that. I think that's just honestly my personality.
Well, and that's why you're a Pulitzer Prize winner. That's why you're on the Time 100 list, because you're not just like in the Dominican sipping on margaritas. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, let me just.
That sounds nice too.
You should probably treat yourself to a hot vacation if that's your thing. You have definitely earned it. I'm just picking at random a couple comments out of our live chat on YouTube. Leslie says, I am definitely going to have to listen to Connie's podcast later today. Great work. How about this one from Kimberly, who says, I'm driving to Vancouver next week. I'm going to download the Stolen series for the drive. Kimberly, I guarantee you won't regret it. How about this from Heidi? Heidi says, I feel like I'm in good company. Anger motivates me too. Heidi says, the last guest, we had a political roundtable, Connie, before you. Says, last guest talked about how it's not motivating. Anger's not motivating. Heidi says, I'm happy to relate to Connie and not the other guys. So there you go. Heidi is motivated by anger too, which can be a good thing. Congratulations on your success. That feels like not an adequate enough thing to say for the magnitude of the recognition, but we're also proud of you, Connie. We're grateful for your time here on the show. Thank you for agreeing to join us.
I'm happy to. Thank you so much for all of your support, and thanks to all of your listeners for all of their support too. And definitely, always enjoy joining you and would be happy to anytime.
Awesome. Well, we won't hesitate to reach out again in future, maybe when a new series is coming out. Thanks again, Connie. Congratulations. That's Connie Walker. She is one of Time's 100 most influential people on planet Earth. For 2024, she's won a Peabody Award. She's won the Pulitzer Prize for her work on Stolen, Surviving St. Michael's, Stolen Season 3, now available, Trouble in Sweetwater. Her investigation looks into the cases of 2 missing women, takes her on a search for justice in a place where, as you heard earlier, people say you can get away with murder. Pretty remarkable guest, hey, man? Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome, yeah.
Sitting at a table with Michael J. Fox, Dua Lipa, Uma Thurman, and having your name on that list for the storytelling that you've been doing, I can't imagine.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that.
Wouldn't that be a great
Just
party
watching all the people that were there. That's
Patrick
incredible.
Mahomes is on the list.
And no small feat, like you said. Like, people think, oh, it's not an award. You just made a list. 100 people on the planet, Ryan.
Yeah.
100 people on the planet.
Yeah.
And she's one of them in 2024. Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Wow, how about this from Sharon? Always appreciate Sharon's been on the show before. Most recently, she was over at COP. Remember the UN Climate Conference? Sharon joined us after that, where she was there as a Métis knowledge keeper. She says in our live chat right now, I'm the first kid that my mom was able to raise from childhood. My older siblings were all scooped. That from Sharon. Thank you for sharing. Unbelievable. This is just obviously Connie's work is resonating with people. We want to hear. I see a lot of people ripping the round table before Connie. You don't have to compare and stack up the guests against one another, but I do agree with you. We're grateful to have her on, and we sure appreciate it. Yeah, let us know what you think about the earlier conversation as well. The political party in Edmonton, TAPYEG, maybe it's your flavor, maybe it's not. The fact of the matter is it is the new reality in Alberta, as Bill 20 will, of course, pass in the Alberta legislature, opening the door for political parties. The question, is it a good thing or not? Our coverage on this has spanned the spectrum from people who think, like this morning, it's a great idea. Our Friday roundtable are generally supportive of it as well. And then, of course, the day before our Alberta Municipalities roundtable, maybe not the same tone. That was, and if you check out our YouTube archives for it, Johnny, I was particularly proud of the thumbnail that our team came up with. I thought the Danielle Smith thumbnail, My Way or No Highways, Danielle Smith's plan to control Alberta cities. That was our episode couple of episodes ago, Thursday of last week. We wrap up the first episode of every. And by the way, can I give just a quick shout out? A bit of a stick in the spokes yesterday. A bit of the Gremlins had
what are you talking
somehow worked their way into our tech setup. And
we were just tired from the hockey game.
We were just tired from watching the hockey. But the truth is, we had a catastrophic technical challenge yesterday that meant that we didn't produce an episode of Real Talk, and I wanted to recognize you for your troubleshooting and the amazing work that you did getting us back up and running today. It wasn't easy. It took hours and hours.
We left the window open over the weekend. About 50 cats
There were
got
50
in
cats, some pigeons, some squirrels.
They ate through a bunch of wires. We had
Who
to
knew
replace
that
everything
they knew how
yesterday.
to type in Control-Alt-Delete? I didn't know that squirrels
I didn't know
could
we
do
had to
that.
have animal insurance either.
Yeah, I know. Are we supposed to have insurance? So shout out to the show's technical producer, the intrepid Johnny Hicks. I was going to say infamous, but that's
either or.
Once you jump into the phone booth and get ready to DJ the playoff parties, you become Johnny Infamous. I know that Charles Adler's going to join us tomorrow. He got bumped out of his Monday spot because we did postpone, and I know he wanted to talk some hockey with you.
I know
we'll do it on the as the Edmonton Oilers prepare. I know this puts a timestamp on this episode, but the Edmonton Oilers will prepare to knock off the Los Angeles Kings and move on toward their ultimate goal.
The city, you can just feel it walking around. Everyone's looking at each other with their hats and jerseys on, like, hey.
And everybody's salivating. Everybody's wondering what round 2 will look like. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're not supposed to talk like this.
Vancouver's a tough team.
Well, yeah, we'll wait and see. Vancouver's not even done yet, so we'll see. Maybe Nashville. Remember that big run they went
3-1?
on? How about the Leafs? Everybody loves
I
watching
knew you
that
would love
series.
this. I knew you would.
We'll save it. We'll save our powder.
This is all for Adler.
We'll keep our powder dry for when Charles Adler joins us coming up on tomorrow's show. But before we get to that, of course, every week our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy open the door for us to get rid of the negativity, harness positive energy, renew our faith in humanity. Sometimes it's a pay it forward story. Sometimes it's a random act of kindness. Sometimes it's something that just takes our breath away. It's Positive Reflections presented by Kuby Renewable Energy. And we loved this. We got this, a series of 3 photos. So you got to check this out on YouTube, our friends, from Jodi. Jodi is a real talker who lives in Slave Lake, Alberta, and she's getting her pilot's license. And John, she was flying during the Oilers game on Sunday night. So this was game 4.
Okay.
So she was flying. So she didn't have the radio on. She wasn't watching on TV. She says, but when I saw the sky start to look like this.
Oh, the oil drop.
She says the oil drop and the shades of blue and orange. She says, I knew from the cockpit that the Oilers won. Stunning photos. Look at this. This is beautiful. Slave Lake, Alberta. Heading from spring into summer. You see the ice there coming off the surface.
That's
and of course,
incredible.
just a stunning sky. Our thanks to Real Talker Jodi, who snapped these photos to submit to the show. She says, I felt like this was a perfect positive reflection. And Jodi, you're right. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us with you up into the friendly skies above Slave Lake, Alberta. You can send us your positive reflection anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can DM it to us on our Instagram or Twitter at RealTalkRJ. And of course, as you know, it's proudly presented by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get your free solar quote today by visiting kubyenergy.ca. Charles Adler joins us tomorrow, and as mentioned, Friday, our Real Talk Roundtable coming up. That's May 3rd. Some of the stars, the directors, the filmmakers that you'll see at Northwest Fest. You're not going to want to miss it. Make it a great day.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager